Hi, I'm Rhys Owen. I'm the Head of Conservation, Woodland and Agriculture for the Eryri National Park. And today I'm at Hafod y Llyn with Ned and Teleri to see how they manage the National Trust property that they've been here on for over 5 years now. So let's go and see what they do. So, Teleri and Ned, thank you for the warm welcome and the rather excellent coffee. Maybe just give us an insight into what made you want to get into agriculture as first generation farmers and some of the challenges that have been involved in taking an agricultural holding on for the very first time?
I always wanted to farm. Hadn't grown up on the farm, but always sort of did, that was always my jobs at the weekend and stuff. So always something I wanted to do, but ended up more in the sort of policy, environmental world, to be totally honest. But then, ended up moving up here and working on a National Trust farm at Llyn Isaf. So when Hafod y Llyn came up, and I'd already met Ned, it was absolutely our chance to sort of, put our own stamp on somewhere and actually farm in our own right for the first time. But definitely been more challenging than we expected.
I was working in conservation at the time and felt that sometimes there was a push just in one direction, so just for conservation or sort of hardline conservation or for productive agriculture, and I wanted to be in that sort of nexus of the two, so you can do both. You can actually produce some food and have some really worthwhile things for nature on the ground. So that was the sort of initial interest for me, and then going forward that sort of changed and developed as we've been here.
So you've taken on agriculture, a fairly big holding in its entirety, challenging in its setting and conditions. So what have been some of the biggest hurdles that you've faced in taking a place like this on?
It's massively cash flow initially, because it was in quite a bad state in terms of sort of infrastructure, the fences, buildings and so on. It just took a lot of our own personal investment, and then getting that money back, especially going more towards cattle, has taken a long time for that sort of income to come back in again, and just keeping the whole thing on its feet without something falling over or becoming a little bit too precarious financially has been quite a challenge.
I think we were probably a little bit idealistic coming into it in terms of the type of farming that we wanted to do, the type of food that we wanted to produce, and then sort of matching that up with quite difficult land to farm and the flooding and not having sheds to put the livestock in. It's taken a while for us to find a system that fits us and the farm and the land and the finances.
It's probably worth mentioning that Hafod y Llyn is very much a summer place. At this time of year, in the autumn or winter, the floods make it quite difficult. So we've just, through the local sort of agricultural community and contacts, just taken on land whenever we can, sort of up to about 6 landlords now, just to make the main farm work without having to put up a shed or something similar.
So, new entrants come into agriculture either from two backgrounds, either they're taking on a holding maybe for the first time or expanding or an ancillary business onto the existing farm, or in your position taking on a holding for the very first time. What kind of help have you found is out there to assist you in this journey?
I mean, we did find that there's always good advice and guidance, because we're lucky because we're familiar with Farming Connect, and we joined other sort of different groups and things, didn't we? The management payments were where we really sort of missed out, because there was no agri-environment scheme when we came into it. It was only in our 5th year of farming here that we got an agri-environment scheme. And it is the type of farm and the sort of farming we do that needs that. It does need that sort of extra payment. But to be fair, in terms of capital work, we got a lot of support from the park, particularly. Hedges, fences, sort of water infrastructure, a lot of fencing, places where we managed peat as well. So that was a massive help for us, because, as Ned said, the sort of infrastructure needed a lot of work. So we've been able to create a system out of that works for both the land we've got here, the wildlife we've got here, and the sort of the farming system that we've got.
It was very much going after the capital works, either Welsh Government or the National Park helped a huge amount with fences and hedges to begin with, because otherwise your system is so sort of all over the place and there's no order to it. Your time is just being wasted chasing animals around the place, which we still do a bit of.
We're quite aware that you're a young couple, the young family. We've seen the Play-Doh in the corner and so on. So how has it been taking on a holding like that? Quite a challenge, I'd imagine, a new holding and the growing family as well. How has that been for you?
It's been a lot of learning on the job. Sort of time management's the biggest challenge, especially when we're starting out and both of us working full time off the farm. And just trying to get the system and the finances in place. But I would say, I think, now that we've got little Yanto more on the way, it does make you even sort of you feel so tied to the place. We were already obsessed with Hafod y Llyn and farming and the area, but now that you know that you're probably going to be here forever, despite different tenancy agreements, it makes you you sort of know that it's worth it to sort of kind of invest in your community and your local area, and actually really start to enjoy the area as well. Not just see all the jobs that need doing, which you do anyway, but really appreciate the environment that we're in, and how lucky we are, really.
Ned and Teleri, you're farming in quite a challenging area in terms of topography and natural restrictions or limitations. Tell me a little bit of what and how you do it here.
Yeah, the grazing is the sort of key ingredient, really. So it's we do quite a mix of different sort of grazing depending on the sort of aim for that certain area. There's places where we graze triple size, NNRs, and what that tends to need is sort of pulses of cattle grazing, and then follow up with sheep, where we're just sort of making sure that there's a real mix of grazing levels going on. So there's places where it is graze shorter, graze longer, and then like sort of nice rests in between. So getting a really nice mix of habitats and sort of structure. And then here on the farm, where it's more sort of marshy rushes, we do a lot more. Well, it depends on the weather and the soil, but we do a lot more sort of mob grazing, where again we're sort of pulsing them through quite quickly. And what we've really found, slightly by accident actually, is that the longer rest periods have allowed a lot of the roots to go deeper, which has helped with a lot of compaction that we've got here, and helped with sort of waterlogging and the flooding that we've got. And then as a sort of really nice byproduct as well, there's a lot more places that have flowered and set seed. So we've had a real nice mix of things coming in since we started doing that. And it's balancing it as well with, because we don't have sheds and we don't feed, so they're pasture fed only. So it's making sure that we've got enough sort of quality grass and making sure that there's something ahead of the cattle and the sheep the whole time. So it's a bit of a juggling, balancing act, really.
We've been undertaking some various trials with you through various schemes. We're on sections of lowland peat here, which we've been doing some work on with us as an authority. Also some mob grazing or cattle grazing of invasive species. How do you find that those things work hand in hand with you in terms of managing the biodiversity here, but also allowing you to make an income from it as well?
Yeah, the infrastructure help was a massive help. So the balsam was basically with the electric fencing, we just sort of pulsed the cattle onto it. Places that it was really taking over, wasn't it? So we could sort of the cattle would come in and graze and trample, and it would be a lot faster for us than trying to cut it and faff around. And then places where we've got lowland peat, the help was sort of putting in sort of improved culverts so we can keep moving the cattle around. It was getting really dangerous there with sort of the flows that were there and how sort of muddy it was getting. So actually putting them in has sort of protected those places, but also still allowed the cattle to rotate around. So that actually a lot of the sort of floodplain meadow species there can still do really well, because otherwise there was areas where it was actually scrubbing up on the peat. So it's making sort of balancing the sort of system with the infrastructure that we need, definitely.
And the environmental challenges are really coming to light today. But we're also on the verge of entering into a Ffermio Bro agreement with you. So Ned, what are you hoping to undertake through that?
So we want to build on the work we've done with invasive species and Himalayan balsam and so on by carrying on that work, so it's not sort of done in vain. And then we want to do a couple of other sort of things for nature and for maybe a bit of an amenity angle in it as well, like opening up ponds and scrapes. And increasingly, I want to sort of integrate trees or shrubs into the farming system for browse. So a sort of agroforestry system, if you like, where the animals come round and maybe 2 or 3 times a year they'll graze willow species or alder species for the nutrients that are in their leaves and maybe not in the grass or the herbs in the grass. So it's trying to integrate the trees into the sort of landscape we've got in a slightly more productive way, but it ticks the box hopefully for both conservation and for agriculture.
As most agricultural holdings in Eryri, you've diversified some of your enterprises here to bring additional income onto the farm. Tell us a little bit of what you've been undertaking.
So we initially tidied up these buildings, the old hay barn and stables, to try and bring people onto the farm, either to help, volunteer, or the odd course or event on a weekend or something, just to bring a little bit of extra income in.
And in fact, you got married in this very building?
That was the real push, really, to get it going and to get the place tidied up. And then since going through all that effort, we thought, oh, we should do something else with it, really. And it's been good to share this sort of story with, make some extra income, because like you were saying, it does pay a bit better than farming sometimes.
You've also used the biodiversity value of your holding and the way that you farm to your advantage in how you retail your product as well. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, we always wanted to sell our own meat, I think, because we were both quite interested in that link between sort of conservation, farming and food. And because of we've sort of branded it as biodiversity beef and lamb because felt like we were doing sort of it plus, so it was great to have that story, and we've had a lot of demand actually. We initially were couriering it out all over the UK, whereas actually now we're selling mostly locally as on a sort of subscription service for boxes 4 times a year. So that's been really good because I think whilst the farming is where our heart is, it's not the bit that's been making the money, so it's been really good to tie it in. Tie it all in with the same business.
It's been really enjoyable meeting you today, seeing what you do and how you do it, as well as the good coffee. And really looking forward to how you progress your business and your family moving on to the future. So thank you very much for such a warm welcome and all the best.
Very welcome.
Yep. Ta-ra.
I'm Gwynedd Watkin and I work for the Farmers Union of Wales here in the old county of Carnarvonshire. I've been working for the union since 1991 and I consider myself very fortunate to be living in such an area with beautiful mountains and wonderful coastline that I can visit whenever I want.
I'm Elgan Jones. I farm here at Castell, Nant Gwynant, with my wife Elain and three children. I work part-time for the National Trust as well on the Hafod y Llyn farm, and I'm a chairman for the Carnarvon branch of the Farmers Union of Wales.
Now then, Elgan, living in such a beautiful area, we're here to talk about the countryside code at the end of the day, and the concerns that we have, and maybe advice that we'd like to present to you with regards to when you visit the area. At the end of the day, the countryside code is all about respect, and if one can show respect when visiting any area, it doesn't have to be in Wales, it can be in any part of the world. If you show respect to that area, then you will enjoy your experience of that area much more by abiding to certain situations in an orderly manner and in a respectful manner. And then Elgan, explain why sometimes you must leave a gate open and sometimes why it should be shut.
Well, it depends really on what the farmer has been doing. If he's been gathering the mountain, say, and the sheep are down from the mountain, well, he'll shut the mountain gate after him one day, and if that's then left open, well, we don't take very kindly to that really, because it's hard enough going to gather somewhere once. It's not quite as pleasant to go and gather it the second time.
For no reason, for no extra reason,
yes.
Because at the end of the day, some gates are left open deliberately by the farmer.
Yes, definitely.
Because he wants, maybe the next day they're going to be gathering, and that gate might be left open, would see some of the livestock coming down of their own accord, and then the following day there'll be a gathering with sheepdogs on that land. Yeah. So, but if a gate is shut, there's a reason why it's shut, that you want to keep livestock separate from each other, isn't it?
Yes, definitely, and the most sensible thing that I would say is just leave it as it is.
As you found it.
As you found it.
Yeah.
the gate's open when you come across it, well, leave it open, and if it's shut, please shut it after you.
Worrying by dogs. We're all concerned about worrying by dogs, but at the end of the day, what we want you to do is be mindful of what happens on that land. You never know when you walk through a gate if there's going to be livestock in that field, because you can see this is a great example. This field is a great example where there could be hidden areas that you can't see when you walk into the field. So it's best to keep your dog on the lead at all times if there's a potential of livestock being in that field at the end of the day. No, we're concerned with people leaving traces of that of them having been there. If you do want to enjoy the countryside, if you want other people to enjoy the countryside, make sure that you don't leave any rubbish behind you. Clear all your mess, and when you go from there, it's as if you've never been there. That's the best advice we can give you, and that's the request we give you, so that you treat the place with respect. And at the end of the day, that's going to lead to everybody having a more enjoyable experience of coming here to Wales. You're very fortunate to be living in such a wonderful place with your wife Elain and 3 children. What's it like to be in such a situation where you're out in the countryside, living and bringing up a family in this area?
Oh, it's fantastic, really, because to tell you the truth, I think we take it for granted, the views. It's not like this every day, no, but have a day like this, and it's worth getting up in the morning to do something, you know, because we're very fortunate. Since 2013 we got the tenancy here at Castell, and the family's grown since then. Fionn was 8, Owie was 5, and Beck was 2, and me and Elain, we're very fortunate really to be able to raise our children in such a wonderful area.
And you're raising in a remote area in one way, but you're not far from anywhere at the end of the day, you?
Nowhere's far these days, really.
So we're here today on the 3rd farm in this video about the Countryside Code and agriculture in the National Park. So I'm actually here with my father and my sister, who coincidentally works in the water service for the National Park Authority. And we're here, we can look around, we can see some of the Welsh mountain sheep behind us. The Welshback cattle is just grazing here behind us as well. And we've been here for 9 generations now. So maybe you'd like to talk a bit more about that.
Yes, farming here is interesting. It can be difficult, but it is also very pleasurable. Being here on a warm, sunny autumn day, away from everybody, is really nice.
There's really interesting place names around the area and on every farm in the National Park, but can you tell us a bit about these and some of the stories maybe behind them?
Yes, there's one field called Buarth Ardlas, and when you hear the word Ardlas, this is where the old drovers used to stop overnight, and they would keep their cattle or sheep in this sort of enclosure. Now, normally it's Cae Ardlas or something like that. I was speaking to somebody who's done a lot of research into this, and she was saying that she'd never heard the term Buarth Ardlas o blaen. They're usually about 800 feet above sea level, and they are usually close to a drover's road or on the drover's road. We've also got a square piece of stone, it's about 1 metre square, which is from some volcanic or ice age movement, which an old lady used to sit on halfway up to the farmhouse, and that's called Cadarnhaen. And we've also got Clogwyn Poeth, which is it shows that it's warm or hot there. These names go back generations, and there are usually good reasons for them. In the Decum, they noted all the field names, and usually if those field names were on that list, they're going back generations, and we are still using the ones in that. So it's important that the traditions and the knowledge is kept.
On our farm, we keep a flock of around 250 Welsh mountain sheep. This breed is very important to us, and it's been bred for being able to survive on these hills. No other breed could survive and flourish on these hills. The Welsh mountain sheep is intrinsic to Eryri. The landscape that you see is basically shaped by previous farmers and the way the Welsh mountain sheep have grazed. They graze for the benefit of nature, and they're conservation grazers, and they're very important to us on the farm. Look at the relationship between the sheep and nature, and the way that the sort of grazing Welsh mountain sheep can benefit the chuff on our farm. We're standing here now in front of the traditional stone walls. These are a feature of a traditional hill farm in Eryri, and we work very hard to try and keep them in the best conditions, but from time to time you do get gaps in the wall, and what can be a problem for us, and what we ask the public is to please use the gates and the stiles that are provided, and please don't go through the walls or take down a bit of wall, because it unstabilises the wall, and then it can cause gaps like this, which are a problem to farmers. This is a boundary wall where sheep can then, is a possible escape route for sheep from either side, which then causes a problem for us as farmers. We do feel that it's important to keep the stone walls, because as you can see, it's a habitat for moss and the smaller creatures within the wall. But what we have here is an old hut circle from the Iron Age, and we feel, as obviously as farmers, we're the custodian of the land, that we need to protect these archaeological features, and yeah, we have a passion that we don't want to damage these features.
We're at the end of our whistle-stop tour around some of the farms in Eryri. So it's important to be aware that the majority of the area is working farms. So please do follow the Countryside Code when you're visiting. You can find those on the Natural Resources Wales website. You can find it on our website, and always follow the Adventure Smart guidelines when you're visiting the National Park.